just, you know.
We're live on Facebook. My name is Sequoia, and these are Hard Conversations with Sequoia. I am an intimacy and relationship coach that specializes in tantric yoga. And I am interviewing today the fantastic two-time best-selling author, Janet Farnsworth. And Janet, I want to welcome you again. The last time we had this call, all the lights went out, including the camera and the computer. So who you see in the background is my esteemed mascot. That's Winter. She matches my pillow. This is Winter the Wonder Dog. Look at that little black.
That is brilliant. Love Winter.
A constant companion. And what we're talking about today, like we talked about the last time, but that was such a juicy topic that we had to start it again and finish this conversation. So hold on, I just actually lost the page. So what would it be like to do the deed and not give a fuck about how you look? So, girlfriend, let's talk about this hard conversation. What would it be like? Tell me. What would it be like?
I'm not entirely sure, because I don't know that I've really expunged the fears of being seen in all of my nakedness. And how gorgeous that even that expression is both literal and metaphoric, you know? I mean, I challenge anybody to stand completely exposed and be completely unstinting in being allowed to be seen without fear, without a fear of judgment or a desire to hide. And, you know, it's interesting, you and I were just talking before we got on this call about the ways that we hide just talking to people about, you know, potential relationships or friendships, because at the end of the day, right, I don't really want her to know what I think or him to know what I'm doing, because ultimately they may go away if I tell them the truth, right? I mean, isn't that, I think, really at the core of so much of what we do is we want to be loved. I know I want to be loved, like just first, middle, and last, you know, that's it. And so, yeah, what would it be like? What would it be like to, and not give up about what you look like? I mean, if you really gotta sink into that and imagine, it's quite revolutionary and mind-blowing, isn't it?
It's amazing.
And there's a lot to say about that. And I will say everything that anyone gives me permission to say. But I'll let you, I don't know if we're supposed to be talking about anything in particular, if you want to ask a question, if you want to guide me, like.
No, we're just diving into it. This is podcast style. Like, okay, so we're two girlfriends, we're two authors of two books. Let's like really talk about the stuff that's not easy to talk about, right? And that is, what does it feel like as a woman to spread your legs open and have someone with their face like a magnifying glass right into the inside of your body, literally, and to tell you that it is either delicious and they want to devour it, or that, you know, they're just trying to do whatever they're supposed to do so that you can have your experience so that they can have their experience, or vice versa. Like, that to me is one of the hardest conversations to have. My experience has been that once you can actually do it, and I usually do it with a mirror and a light, so that the person who's being looked at can see the person looking at them, then you actually get turned on by learning how your body actually does look delicious to your partner. That is one of the ways that I healed myself from all of my sexual abuse and sexual trauma, and even just the trauma that I created in my own brain because I told myself that my yoni was ugly. I thought it was gross. And I can only see it from these eyeballs looking down unless I get a mirror, right? But when I had a lover go, oh my God, your lips, they're like coral. I was like, what? Oh, it's the most beautiful thing. You should see this. I go, I can't see it. Get me a mirror, show me. And then all of a sudden we were like making love for hours because he showed me what it was about my body that was beautiful to him. But previous to that, I thought that was ugly. I didn't want to look at it. I was ashamed for somebody else to have their face there.
Mm. That's such a powerful image. And, I know that this practice is celebrated in several practices. And when I hear you describe that, I work with people who the thought of doing that is about as alien as, driving a bus standing on your head backwards.
Yes.
It's like, what are you even talking about? That is like weird. It's uncomfortable. It's gross. It's embarrassing. And, you describe something really powerful that I'm interested in hearing you say more about, that it was somebody else in tandem with you showing you what it was like to look at yourself with desire.
Yes.
Like you needed a human mirror as you were looking at the little mirror. And so what do you do if you don't have somebody to tell you how beautiful you are?
Really great. What I did before that experience even happened was a lot of mirror work on my own. I was in this leadership program where I was training to be a transformational teacher and how to transform the people I was working with. I first had to make sure that I was doing the job within myself. And so I did a lot of mirror work. And have you ever done a lot of mirror work? I'm guessing some of the work that you do.
I'll come along with my part. You do yours.
Yeah. So I did a lot of mirror work, which was probably the most uncomfortable thing because I was trained in the theater arts. So I was trained that the fourth wall is this imaginary wall and you don't actually look at the people in the audience when you're performing. And so I was like, oh, that's good because I'm going to get over my performance anxiety by just imagining that they're not there. But you can't really do that and practice what you're looking like when you're on stage unless you actually stand in front of your mirror and you do a lot of the rehearsals to yourself. So I did a lot of mirror work first to get to the point where I could actually look at someone else looking at me, whether it was in rehearsal or then later with a lover. I practiced. Did you ever do oming or due dating and the practice of clitoral?
Which for those of us who are watching is deliberate orgasm.
Deliberate orgasm. Thank you. Deliberate orgasm or orgasmic meditation. So two same thing. They're the same thing. They're just two different branches. I was trained with deliberate orgasm through a lineage that's different than oming. So then I started realizing I had some sexual dysfunction and I needed to go practice some of these things with people who were trained to hold that space. And so that was the partner who was oming me and explaining to me what my yoni looked like and my beautiful sexual sacred space really was like. And because he was trained to give this kind of constant, very healing and healthy feedback, I was able to receive it. And from that moment, when I realized that was healing, I have asked all of my partners, what is it that you see? Because I'm seeing from different perceptions, different eyeballs, different life experiences, and a lot of it was traumatic. Body image issues. I was a fashion model, and the fashion industry is very, the acting and fashion industry is very traumatic, and the things that are done to people who are in that industry, very traumatic. So I was healing from all of that, and I asked, all of my partners, I would really love to understand what it is attractive. and everybody has different answers. And especially when they're making love to me, and especially when they're doing oral, delicious sex with me, I want to know. And now I tell them it's not just making sounds and making moans and having an orgasm, but I give constant feedback that is like appreciation feedback, acknowledging what they're doing so that they actually know, so they can keep doing it or they can alter and do something different. So that's how that all came about.
Is so yummy. And there's your boudoir with your poodle and your velvet pillows behind you looking so delightfully lush. And it's such a, it's, I think when we last spoke, actually I used the word aspirational. It's like I see you, I hear you describe that, and I think, yes, that's how I want it to be, that's how it's supposed to be, and I want that for everyone, men, women, men with men, women with women, to be able to be with each other in transparency and our vulnerability and our desire, and do it authentically. I mean, yes, yes, yes. And it's a beautiful moment for us to come together because, well, I have that aspiration. I also have the personal experience and the gift of working with women for whom it's an aspiration or a dream that feels really out of reach. And, and I know, when I hear you describe that, and you asked about the mirror exercise, I can tell you very specifically that, doing body image and body positive work very specifically, years ago, I came to a place where I realized, oh, now this is my experience, this is my story, and everyone's got a different one. But I thought, oh man, that self-affirmation shit, that is like a joke. Because every time you tell me I love myself, I am beautiful, immediately on its heels comes, I am ugly, I am a piece of shit. And so every time I make one of those affirmations, all I'm doing is reinforcing my self-criticism.
Yeah.
And that was a huge revelation for me. So I was like, okay, out go the positive self-talk shit. I'm like, I just can't do it. And there was an interim suggestion by a woman who does tapping. And it was I wish I could remember who it was. And because I've quoted her and I still can't remember her name, because I think I don't even remember what the context was, but she said, look, those moments when you feel so full of self-loathing and the idea of self-love is just feels impossible. How about this? How about you just say, I am open to the possibility, if not in this lifetime, the next, that I might love myself. And I was like, okay, thank you. That I can sign up for. I'm open to the possibility that whatever that affirmation, whatever that thing is that you are longing for, to be open to what we might call self-love or to receive love. But for me, what is the deepest part of that, which is the work that I do, is, well, reflected in an experience that I had exquisitely around 5 years ago. I'm a yoga teacher. I've been teaching for, I don't know, thousands of classes. And, you go through peaks and valleys, and when you feel inspired and when you don't, and you're thinking, I have no idea what I'm doing, but then you get through it and you think, I'm a genius. This is fantastic. Right. So you go through all of it. But I was at a particularly low. And I wanted to take a class before I was supposed to teach. And normally for me, to think about the steps or the sequence that I have to teach, I have to be in my practice. So I go and I do my yoga and I got on the mat, but I was feeling tired and I was feeling depressed and I felt completely worthless. And I started to be filled with self-doubt. And I thought, I'm really full of shit. I should give this up. I have no idea what I'm doing. I'm a fraud. I mean, you name it. There was pretty much every reason that I should hate myself in this place that I could possibly imagine. I've been thinking about it and getting this sick feeling in my stomach. Mm-hmm. And I'm open to the possibility I'm a good teacher. Damn, it didn't work. It's like, empty the thoughts, didn't work because they just kept coming in. You're a piece of shit, you're a fraud. It's like, I love you, whatever. and it wasn't working. And I was like, oh my God, like the time is ticking. My students are about to walk in and I can't get my head in the right space. I can't get myself to do this. I got more and more tense, more and more unhappy, and more like, I really have to give up. I have to quit my job. I better quit here. I better quit at the other studio I'm teaching. I mean, it was like the spiral of misery, like hardcore. I can't even do the practice that some other kind teacher is leading. I remember it was David Overholt. I remember who was teaching. And so I thought, okay, what I can do is the thing that I've been spending all my time yapping my mouth about, which is the practice of now, which is all I need to do is just be here now and welcome all of the experience of myself. Welcome every thought and feeling without blame or shame, which is a hell of a lot easier to say than it is to do. And so I went, okay, all right, come on, let's go. And I surrendered into, all right, thoughts, let's go. Tell me what you got. And for about, it felt like forever, probably it was maybe 60 seconds. I mean, there's research that says that feelings actually cognitively only last, or neurologically only last around 90 seconds. For whatever it was, felt like forever. And it was some time. Every negative thought like came up on me like a crashing. It was like every fear I had was like right there. But then something magical happened. I was done. And for the first time in like 30 minutes of being on that damn mat trying to practice, I just started to move. And, I think that when we stop fighting our experience of ourselves is such a powerful practice. As a violence survivor and as someone who grew up afraid of the dark, literally until I was an adult and a mother, I did not like being in dark places. It was a Halloween and I remember feeling like creeped out because all the scary Halloween things really kind of were always a little bit of triggers for me. And I was going up the stairs and I was convinced out of the corner of my eye, I saw like there was something horrible and scary in the dark. And for one of the first times in my life, I surrendered the thought. And I said, okay, I accept what you feel. I accept all of me. And in my vivid imagination, I saw this horrible witch with like dripping flesh, and she was terrifying. And I was like, it makes me weep to think about it. But I said, okay, come on, come with me, let's go. And 3 steps up that stairway, she had completely gone away. And I think that when we do that kind of thing, even when it's about something that we're desiring pleasure and joy for, that when we just can make room for how we feel in all of its breadth and all of its depth and all of its complicated mess, a profound thing happens. Because every one of us is a dynamic, vital creature that wants the best for itself. And when we're stuck fighting, contracted against what we feel, we can't then dynamically evolve into pleasure, into peace. And that's my mirror experience.
Yeah. Well, you're bringing up that which we resist persists. And that is something that I have, literally since I was 15, when I went into the fashion industry, I have been working on unwinding everything you just described. And that is the work that I now take into any uncomfortable situation. As a matter of fact, I purposefully, and you can hear it from what I described before you were sharing about that, and I purposefully put myself into uncomfortable situations because I know now at 50 that those are the areas where I'm still incomplete. Those are the areas that I still haven't quite surrendered to those demons that are in the shadows. And so it's an advanced practice to hold a mirror and a light and make requests of my partners to do these exercises, because I'm still the little girl who, went into a fort and had, people play with my genitals, not knowing that that was going to leave me scarred as an adult, because that was an experience that I felt icky about. As a matter of fact, I talk about this in It's Hard. I understand about sexual dysfunction because I had sexual dysfunction because of traumas from childhood where I was left with the conversation icky. I called it my icky conversation. I thought that every part of my body was icky, left over from all the things that happened, in the shadows. So I love what you're talking about. And it reminds me that the thoughts and the actions we take on those thoughts, that's in the neurological pattern of what happens. The first thing is a sensation. The second thing is perception. The third is emotion. The fourth is the thought. And the fifth is the action. But most of us are trying to change the thoughts and the actions. And that's not actually where we can heal, because that's the symptom of basically what I learned years ago about, in my yoga practice was, oh, the sensations that come up when I'm doing this pose, I don't think I can hold this, is actually going to make me fall, not the practice. The practice is going to make me stronger. And so the sensations are the very beginning of what takes us out. But it's just, our bodies are, I love that our bodies are our superpower. Your new book, like, your body is your superpower. Exactly. Because we are antenna, and that sensation that our super, power is giving us is the ability to just track what's going on and be able to be easy with ourselves and surrender into our own vulnerability. So I'm just so excited that we get to continue going deep into this conversation. And I know that you and I are going to have different ideas of things, but tell me more about this new.
No, and actually, because I want to ask you about yours, because I think that they all kind of streamline in together. Is that English? But also, as we were discussing before we started talking here, what you just described about your process, you are an intimacy pleasure coach. Yes. Right? You want people to feel good in some of the most intimate places of their lives, right? Which is in bed or between.
Well, I mean, I don't think that I want people to feel good. Like, I actually want people to discover what pleasure is to them.
Thank you.
Pleasure for me is different than, and I just described, I go into uncomfortable situations. It's not a good feeling. I have discomfort in order to find the gold, which is.
Yes. And that's what, thank you, because that's what's so exciting about, I think, where our books or our works streamline together, because to know what's pleasure, you've got to know and feel your body. And for a lot of us, we are not connected. I know I wasn't. I was completely checked out of my body for the first 40 years of my life. I was like, no, thank you, not a good place to be. And it was the coming into the body that, I discovered, oh my God, there's this source of genius in here. Holy crap. It knows what's right for me. It knows what's wrong for me. And the nuances of the right and the wrong are what I feel. But if I can't feel what I'm feeling, how the hell can I figure out what it is? And
goosebumps. Look at those goosebumps.
Yes.
I goosebumps.
Yeah, I can't do it. I like it. I see a nice arm. Right. But, and that, and now I forgot what I was going to say because we both got excited.
Sorry.
But that's just it. Right. And so it's like when we're excited or when or equally uncomfortable, it's like, that's your body's truth. And how the hell can we be anything else than ourselves, particularly in the place that we are most exposed, vulnerable, than without our clothes on, which comes back to the topic of what we're supposed to be talking about, which is not just, yeah, whatever, because I guess we can't say that word here, but we can say it as an epithet, like, oh, fucking shit, but we can't say the verb, whatever.
Totally.
But, right, which is sort of interesting in itself, but what would that be like to go into that experience of being so completely oneself that you don't have to, let me start over. What would it be like to have the experience of yourself so clearly, without shame, without the need to go to anyone or anything else to define you, and to be able to act from that place in pursuit of pleasure?
Yes.
Now, it has nothing to do with not caring about somebody else, and I say this actually in my second book, because it's a book about instinct. It's a book about your intuition, to go in to know. And that equally, while you know instinct and drive, you also have an instinct to love. You are both of those things, right? You want, and you want to love.
Yes.
And so, it's a refinement. Oh man, is that a refinement? Like, I work every day with men and women having to make that distinction, as I do every day still, the discernment of what is actually feeling versus acting it out. What is owning my want rather than just doing my want. I mean, man, you got to go deep to really understand that difference. But to be able to be in that place, then now I'm ready. Then now you're ready to show up for intimacy into you, I see, or whatever that expression is, right? To actually be two wholes together.
Yeah.
Like that. So to the question, what would it be like? It would be mind-bogglingly fantastic, wouldn't it? Not to care about like how your thigh looks in bed. I mean, how many artfully draped sheets have I worn over the decades? Like, because you can't see that, because I can't really be me. You better not actually see my cellulite, because I have to still modify, adjust, and become or be something of what I think you want me to be. Now, it's possible that he or she may want that, but like, is that what I really want? I mean, do you really want to find pleasure only when your sheet's draped over your thigh? Sorry, it's one of my tender places. I don't know what maybe you don't have tender places, or like over my baby belly, like my post baby belly. Like I can't, gotta put my hand there if he's going down there, whatever, right? But to actually be so in alignment with your connection to your body and how you feel.
So it's so great that you're talking about that. And when I was showing my goosebumps and we got like we got a little distracted, I was thinking to myself, what you're talking about is what I describe, and it's hard. And that is, most people have sexual experiences with their skin bags. This is your skin bag, right? They're skin bags slapping together for friction release. That's what I describe. That's not what I teach. What I teach is actually where to find pieces of God in the person that is sitting in front of you. And that's one of the reasons why, like, my book is really about finding the electricity, which is the sacred spirit, that we all are pieces of God showing up to have these experiences, so the greater consciousness could be also up-leveled. And in that way, I'm going in as a sacred experience of ecstasy, which is what I call sex, that I'm looking for awe. I'm looking for the nature of beauty before me. And I consider myself to be pansexual, which means that I love the person or the being or the soul, not the he, she, they, z, whatever, they identify with. I'm not looking for identifications. I'm looking for souls to love. And that's one of the reasons why I'm considered a non-monogamist, which is just an umbrella term for someone who is not going to isolate my love to one person, and I can share it however I choose. It could be that I never have sex with any of these people, but it actually is that it's an expression of what I say. I have a freedom to love how I choose to love and create my family to be by choice, not only by blood. But I think that so much of our past history of humanity has altered this thing that we call our bodies, which I'm calling a skin bag, as the important thing. And that's what I found to not be true when I was selling my skin bag as a fashion model and as an actress. I had, at one point in my life, I had 6% body fat because I'm an endurance athlete, and they were still rejecting me on the catwalk because my hips were too big. There's nothing I can fucking do about that. I have big hips, which is why I was able to birth my child by pushing her in 19 minutes. She went flying out of me because I have fantastic birthing hips. Yay me for birthing, but not good for the catwalk. So like that was when I was in my teens. So, a lot of the trauma in my life turned out to be the thing that taught me to be an enlightened human who applies these things instead of wounds to be opportunities to grow and heal from them. And I think that that's something that's interesting about what we're talking about, because so much of the past media, marketing, I consider all marketing to be sex work. I mean, I was in the industry, the fashion modeling industry, and everything is based on how sexy can we make someone, and it's objectification of different aspects of what someone is saying is the beauty of that day. I don't think that we're actually in a bed with another human being. We're in a bed with a piece of flesh. And the minute you and I have another conversation where we're actually saying, let's scrap that old idea and let's be in an intimate act with someone that we're wanting to get to know. The Hebrew word for sex is to know. So let's be doing this to know the person. I've got scars all over my body from different traumas. Why do you have that scar? Oh, this one I got when I had a porta catheter where I pierced my skin every day for, Lyme disease. This one, oh yeah, they reconstructed my knee. This one I got my nose broken. Like, why? I want to know you. What are the stories behind your life that I see in your beautiful flesh? And that's what I want love and sex to be about.
That's beautiful. That to me is my understanding of Tantra. This incredible understanding of the masculine and the feminine, which has nothing to do with biology or gender, which has to do with the duality of ourselves, right? Two people, two sides, the right and the left coming together to be one, like in that union. And I love that.
Brahma.
Yeah, it's interesting to hear you describe that about knowing and being known, which actually, by the way, were literally my first wedding vows, which we wrote, is to know and to know each other, to be known. But sorry, so that was a small distraction for me thinking about that. A very sweet and beautiful, but no longer happening marriage. And but it's interesting hearing you describe that, because of course I have this curiosity about like a chicken and an egg thing, that as I understand in the Tantra, these two sides that come together as one, which is the one truth, which is the ecstatic truth, which is one soul, which according to the Tantra tradition is this universal reality, right? And that I actually do write about this in my second book as well, which is that one of the things that to me is one of the deep magics of life is that is true, that you are me and I am you, and we are all part of this ecstatic one, and you are completely unique. You've never existed. You never will again. What does one do with those two truths? Well, for me, one has to just show up and be in the moment and survive what feels to be the unsustainable, unsurvivable truth, which is that there is no single truth. Like that's another, I think that's part of the new paradigm, right? Of like, sorry, there ain't no single person's truth that gets to be everybody's. Damn, that group you thought was your definitional reality of life. Sorry, even those of us who've been in communities during quarantine who see these things fracturing, I think the new age, this new paradigm is the only truth is in alignment with your own soul, your own self. And that when you're truly doing that, now you're aligned with the universe. Now you're aligned with me, because the universe, in my belief, is love, right? And so it's wonderful to hear you describe your work in both It's Hard and, your second book about non-monogamy, of what it is to be in intimacy with an other, right? And how it sort of beautifully streamlines with, I think, what I'm talking about, which is intimacy with oneself, and how it's kind of, it goes back to what we first started about, like, how does it start? Like, you had this experience of somebody mirroring for you, you are perfect, you're beautiful and juicy and sexy. And so that you can now feel that as one. Like, you can lie there and you know what to tell your lovers, you know what you want and what you desire, because someone held that for you. It's an interesting circle.
Totally. What I'm hit by with what you were just diving into is that how similar our books are, even though they're different books. Because this book, I'm Not Jealous, was my book to women, to encourage women to love yourself first. And once you actually understand that the solution to jealousy is, no matter what choice you make, love it, have reverence for yourself in the moment, and know that you can choose a different choice next. But you have to start with the oneness and your connection to your authentic self. And so I talk about love leadership, and love leadership includes integrity, authenticity, being responsible, and being up to something bigger than yourself. So women, if we want to be sovereign and the queens of our own domain, it's our responsibility to do that for ourselves, because nobody can pee for us and nobody can make us sovereign. We're the only ones who can make our own life sovereign. And I'm hearing that that's also what you're writing about in your books as well.
Yeah, and you make me think about, because we of course know each other through the author incubator, and I believe the head of that, Angela Lauria, does say that we're all just wanting to teach self-love for women in transition. That's it. Because like, damn, that kind of is the answer to everything, isn't it? It's like, really? Yeah, probably. But it does make me want to ask you, because before we were, again, going into the official part, you were starting to share about that you are seen as a sex coach or as an intimacy coach, or like just how to do one thing or the other, but that actually it's a much deeper process for you.
We don't even get into sex until you've healed your wounds, babies. Sorry. Because I know that actually, the sex act is such a vulnerable place. And what I don't think a lot of people see, because we're still, we're programmed from, let's call it Hollywood, right? We're programmed from media that the sex act is a skin bag friction, and it looks just like the media and Hollywood never truly gave a great, honest depiction of what birth could be for women. That we're all like freaking out and grabbing the man's head and said, "Get this thing out of me." That wasn't my experience at all. I had a beautiful day. I had my family around me. I mean, I loved my birth experience, not the same as what Hollywood projects. The same is true for sex. They project it that it's this objectification of this skin bag kind of concept that I'm using. And I'm using that very specifically because it's juxtaposition to the sacred experience of ecstasy and having reverence. And that is what I would want to say when you were talking about, how do we find that? In my opinion, as women, when we can find reverence and we can find prayer and cultivation, not love inauthentically. If we honestly don't love a part of our body, I don't believe that we should be pretending that we do. I think that we can give it love, but we shouldn't be lying to ourselves, because that idea of, oh, just say something to your body and it will be so. No, you actually have to have the heart coherence and have an experience of reverence, gratitude, and honor, like we're namasteing to our deepest parts of ourselves, to actually have our body go, oh, that's all I really wanted. I just wanted to be loved exactly the way I am and exactly the way I'm not. And to surrender into this moment, that then I can start from there and go into the next moment where I do what I want to and I don't do what I don't want to. Like, I really think that we traumatize ourselves by trying to force ourselves to do something that's not working. And I find that as I find more reverence for myself, even in those moments where I'm like, I'm ugly to myself, like that was an ugly thing to say or do. All right. But I love who you have been being in your life. And I love that you tried. And having those kinds of conversations for me are what like bring me to own the stupid shit that I do and also the good shit that I do. But that the sovereignty is really something we have to do in ourselves before we can ever open our sovereignty up and offer it to somebody else to enjoy.
Thank you. I feel like what's so beautiful about what you just shared, love, and the way in which you shared it is so emblematic of everything. It's like I hear you talking about something that you teach and do and write about from your heart. And, and this experience of being able to connect. And Winter agrees because Winter just got up.
Someone just arrived too, a friend.
Well, there's that too.
She knows there's a beach walk happening soon. She's like, ooh.
But and that actually Winter just reinforced what I was going to say in a beautifully visual sense. My mentor always said that dogs were instinctive, and that if you dreamt about them or as we experience them, they are animals of pure instinct, living strictly in the moment. It does not matter what happened before. It doesn't matter what happened, what they think, because it's what's happening right now. And right now, you were describing something from your own personal experience that felt real and was moving and was about connecting to yourself. But actually recognizing that I just want to be loved and I want to not be what I'm not and to be able to be who I am. And that it's then all the other good stuff can happen. And, and you heal that specifically in pursuit, of further exploration with a body, whether or not, it's your own body and somebody else's or somebody else. And and I'm doing it by focusing more on how can you do that, just sitting in the moment. And if you have the story about what this is specifically, as you call the skin bag, which by the way, it's a little freaky to me because I, who am now 54, who have parts of my body that look more like a bag. It's like, I really want to think about it already more than I do as like a baggie, but I'll take it. But that all that any of us are ever doing, and really goes to the question of like, what would it be like to fuck and not give a fuck about what we look like, is what would it be like to always be able to be completely who you are without apology and with a feeling of love, like loving, right?
Yes.
That's it.
That's
all
it.
It is. Everything else is just dressing.
Totally. Oh my God. So,
yeah.
What I am brought to is one of the moments in my life when I healed myself from worrying about what my body looked like. It also made my body a lot prettier, by the way, when I healed this, was when I realized that I was never going to ever go backwards in time and look the way I did when I first started modeling, and my body is always going to get older. I'm not going to chase it. And I'm a naturalist, so I don't believe in getting a whole bunch of augmentation and stuff like that. But I'm also a nutritionist, so I like food as medicine. And so when I realized that my body, my hair is gray, like my body is going to continue aging. So I can either be pissed off about that, and anger and all that stuff just makes you older faster, and stress about that. I could either chase it, get angry, or I could actually surrender to it and embrace what that process is going to be and incorporate that into my practice of loving myself. And so I tend to practice a sexual meditation with myself at least once a day. I wake up sometimes and I just do a 15-minute sexual meditation with myself so that I can remind myself that I am my first lover, and that I am, no matter how old I am, I am to love what this beautiful expression of God is today. And I think that's something that's very special for all of us to do, for all of ourselves, because we can't have anything other than what we have right in front of the mirror. I mean, we can't.
Testify. Okay, good. Yes, beautiful. Exactly. Yeah.
So what would it be like to not give a fuck about looking, or whatever you look like when you fuck? How could we have that be a practice for the next 7 days? Whether we're having sex with ourselves or having, sex with someone else, what kind of a practice could we do?
I think that, it's a great question. And I think that we have to ask, like, we're on some continuum, because to me, I do see it as a continuum. To bring somebody else into the equation for me is another step of vulnerability. I mean, I think when we first started talking, I shared that, I mean, I've been a therapist for 30 years. I've been a body empowerment coach for, probably 14 or 12. And I had my first experience of doing naked yoga, like this summer, where I was like, I could just be like, wow, look at that weird shit my body's doing. That is new, I mean, this is like having to talk myself off the ledge of, I'm going to be out in daylight looking at what, and so, and that, for me, it's a continuum process, right? So if the question is for 7 days, how do we get to what it would feel like, to actually not care with somebody else and be there for pleasure, to me is also, if we kind of distill that into how can you be okay with yourself and find where your pleasure is, like that to me kind of like brings us in a little more into maybe making it something to hold on to.
Yeah.
And and for me, being naked and actually being able to walk by the mirror and look for years was a practice to me. I mean, I couldn't do it because the shame and the loathing was so strong. And this was when I was, and actually I also did modeling, and I was anorexic, and I was still fat, and so, just for me, what would it be like to walk by the mirror and not have hatred would have been a victory beyond imagination.
Oh,
and so,
so good.
So if there's like a 7-day practice, to me, maybe then it's like, what would it be like to be yourself? Maybe it's all by yourself alone.
Mm-hmm.
And then what would it be like for that to be okay?
So what I'm actually getting from the question I asked and what your response is, that what would be a great starter practice for everyone, whether you already feel confident in the bedroom and what you look like when you're fucking or not, what would be a great practice for all of us for 7 days is to take on a practice of mirror work and just standing vulnerably in front of the mirror, whether it's clothes on, not clothes on. By the way, I kind of think the body looks a lot better without clothes than trying to squish ourselves into something that was manufactured, maybe not quite for our size. that's a whole nother conversation that we need to get into, but another time. But I think mirror work is a great practice because it's something that you can do with yourself. And if it's hard for you to do that, which it was hard for me. So like, let's not mistake this to be like, oh, I got it all worked out over here. Cause I don't, people. But I think mirror work, standing in front of a mirror. Yeah.
And then what? And so, I mean, cause should we rewind. Shall we co-collaborate this? Because if that's going to be your invitation for 7 days of mirror work,
yeah,
we then add in 7 days of mirror work, which is not to have to stand there and say, I'm beautiful, because that brings me back to like, I'm just going to say I'm not, but to actually stand in front of the mirror and maybe make a practice of actually just paying attention and welcoming whatever you are aware of. So there's, I mean, this to me is like this part of my course, you know, I mean, it's a process just to be able to stand there and welcome your experience of yourself is a huge deal for those men and women who are disconnected. To do just that is a Herculean task. Right. And so can you do the 7-day exercise, looking in the mirror, just being able to witness, which is what Swami Kripalu says is the highest form of consciousness, witness with compassion.
Yes. Just
what happens when you look in the mirror. Can we do that for 7 days?
Yes. The witnessing is always the most important part. As a matter of fact,
with compassion.
With compassion, with empathy, really. Empathy for me is accepting, unconditional acceptance is what I would consider empathy. And that's what I described earlier when I said accepting yourself exactly the way you are and exactly the way you aren't.
Yeah.
That's
beautiful.
Pinpoint. There's not I'll accept the way I am, but I don't like the ways I'm not. Like if you really wrap your brain around accepting what is and what isn't at the same moment is saying, okay, I'm not trying to change it by acceptance, right? But to witness yourself in all the experiences of shit, I want to put clothes on really quickly. I don't want to look at this because I have these conversations, you know. So I think, the witness of the practice for just 7 days is actually life-changing.
Yes, I love it. I will try to do that. And for those people listening or who want to join who find that hard, you can always contact Sequoia or me.
Yes, please. Oh, how do they get a hold of you?
Right? Is to
how do they get a hold of you? And how do they get a copy of either of your books or both books?
Yeah, I would love to give a copy of my book to whoever would like. I have an ebook. You can just contact me at Janet Farnsworth. It's my name. Actually, should be on the screen right now. Just oneword.com. That's my website. People are welcome just to come and say hello. I'd love to hear from you.
I'm so glad that we had this hard conversation.
But wasn't hard for me, but I did enjoy it. This is great. Such a joy. I'm so happy that you are doing this because, you know, in such a real way, it's a beautiful mirror for exactly what we're talking about, to have space to be able to talk about the things that normally we don't. To me is like compassionate self-witness. It's like, can we just like acknowledge this is hard or difficult, or can we actually talk about the taboo? In Hawaii, it's kapu, you know, can we just make space to not have to have something be so horrible that it can't even be discussed? To me is exactly, it's like another iteration of what we've been talking about. So I'm so grateful that you do these talks and that, you know, you bring everything into it to share and to explore. It's pretty amazing. So thank you.
You're welcome. And I love celebrating you and the work you're doing because body empowerment is such an important aspect of healing a person. And what I have found is that when we can be in a state of wholeness and completeness, wherever we are and wherever we aren't, that is when we can really experience pleasure, which is why I never go into the sex healing work until we've actually healed those wounds that are preventing us from getting there. So I'm so honored that we had this conversation, even it was round 2 because of the power outage. But this is just delightful, and we've got to do another one. Yes. And let's talk some more about these topics that we're practicing as women to talk more about. And also we're showing others that, you know, it's okay. We did not die, people. We're still alive. We had the conversation. I think we're both glowing a little bit more than we did when we started. And I want to, break the habit of these things being uncomfortable. So that's why I have this whole series of hard conversations, because the more we talk about them, the better we'll get at talking about them.
Woo! Testify! Yay! Thank you.
All right. You're welcome. And thank you to everyone who is watching. And you can find Janet Farnsworth at janetfarnsworth.com and her 2 books that she's the best-selling author of. Love your body, and your body is your superpower. All right. Talk to you soon.